updating your BCP and COOP plan. So BCP and COOP really mean the same thing. We've got the business continuity plan and continuity of operations. Both really the same thing. The words become interchangeable. The difference really is a BCP plan is really for a for-profit, a business entity, collecting revenue. It's protecting revenue stream, that kind of stuff. But for many of us, that's who we are, right? Your utilities that are collecting sometimes those fees, parks and rec. Some of our members, that's a big profit center, the big revenues from ballparks. Some of our members own big baseball stadiums, Pensacola, the Wahoo Stadium that we just rebuilt. That was a huge revenue. So BCP plan for them, they kind of had more of a BCP plan for loss of rent, loss of leases, extra expense, those things that maybe weren't so much which other public entities are dealing with in a typical continuity of operations. It's not really addressing money. So it's a team effort. You can read the bullet points. To do this, it really is built departmentally because how one department plans is going to be greatly different maybe from another. And what we have found, it's usually better to put a couple of those folks in a room, let them develop a plan that you yourself then can bring into more of a comprehensive. Now, a lot of your first responder and your groups, police, fire, they live in this world. All right, so they're one of the first places to start with, and oftentimes that COOP plan that you have is at a very high level, talking about everything, and you drill down. I know Melbourne, who's next to us, we've worked extensively with them on their COOP plan all the way down to, who jumps in, who fills in, who's next up, all these type different deals. At the end of the day, what it really does is help prioritize your efforts. So those of us that are stepping in and stepping out, we can kind of look at a high level as to what the expectations are and how we're prioritizing. My suggestion to everybody that's building COOP plans, and we've got some examples where you can go, they can be comprehensive. They can also be to a point where they're there to address a fluid situation where things are going to always be changing and coming at you fast with different people. Because this is another promise I'll make you, that those of you in this room, or those of you that are part of your insurance and emergency plan, when I show up or the team shows up, a percentage of you won't be there. It happens in every event. Why? It's not because you don't want to be there. You may be affected. Your house may be destroyed. You may not be able to return to the city for other reasons. So if you were the ringleader, if you were the Messiah, if you were the hero, and you're not there, that plan's not working. So those plans, and we've got members, man, they've got folks written in. It's like, great, but when we do a tabletop drill, all we have to do is remove one or two people and the plan crumbles because the rest of them go, oh, I don't know. I'm only here. I only come in on Tuesday if, I know, but it's Wednesday and this person's not here. So your plans you make, I always say KISS, keep it simple, as I get into hard rock days. Okay. No public entity department can afford the consequences. We talked about this earlier. It's the confusion, it's the time lapse, everything that happens, the finger pointing the blame. The biggest thing that we look at is you're jeopardizing your eligible recovery funding, whether it's coming from insurance or perhaps some eligible FEMA. Those are time sensitive. And when we come to you, it's nice to kind of be able to get people in a room, huddle up, take a breath, and kind of figure out what short-term and long-term recovery means and what's the real objective of the city. Another example of that is a member that we were working of in the South, we were very proud of. This was a number of years ago. We rebuilt the city hall, cost about $7 million, and we did it in just 3 weeks. Those were miraculous types of events that we did because plans were in place and we had people working through it. But what we found at this one city, and we rebuilt this city hall, we got done, they had a big ribbon cutting, news was out there different nights, public was watching going, helicopters, we're flying in equipment, dropping it on roofs, doing stuff. This is amazing. It took 2 years to build this thing. And I'll never forget, there was a young lady, and I think she was a temp or a contracted employee, was sitting there, and she said, I really haven't been at the city long. She goes, this is amazing. She said, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We're building a new city hall next year. It's like, okay, let's get you out the door. Let's explain the word temporary assignment. What that meant is we all got caught up into trying to be a hero, or different folks got caught up into saying, oh, we can recover, we can do this. Instead of somebody looking at the eye of long-term recovery going, hey, that's great, but maybe we'd be better to work with FMIT and go, hey, let's understand this claim because that money may be better well served down the road. Maybe we should apply that money to something else rather than let's just go down this road of rebuilding a facility that perhaps shouldn't be rebuilt. Okay? That happens every day in the claim world. So all these programs that we're going to present today, it's not here to force you into this road of recovery because you said, hey, I went to this seminar and gosh darn it, I got a plan that says we're rebuilding this place. Let's be smart. It's your money. We have robust insurance that can work with you on developing that same property that we're going to still insure for you. So it's in both our efforts, right? It's in both our advantage to have you harden that asset. Let's look for ways, whether through a hazard mitigation grant or maybe there's some other programs that FMIT has that we can bring together and make that building more resilient to what happens. And that's something that the FMIT risk team and your risk guys, if you don't know who your risk advocate is and your consultant, then you need to get with John Ligon. Because if they've not been to your city, working with you and walking your city, helping identify vulnerabilities, then you're missing another caveat to this program. They hold the programs accountable. So again, reach out to them, utilize them. They're a resource. They're your advocate, they're your partner. I'm good. I could be like a NASCAR driver working in our themes, our logos. All right, we talked about putting a target over your head. And that's really what it feels like a lot of times when you've got to be that individual of being, the fortune teller, identifying risk. How are we going to handle it? It is what it is. Okay? Understand that. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not going to be perfect, I promise you. And again, you're going to make mistakes. You won't be able to plan for everything, for every condition. That's one of the plans. That's number one on my list with our team. It's a teamwork process, all right? And it's what it says. The plan's always going to be second guessed. It is what it is. So we all have to be big boys and girls. Can't get our feelings hurt. You're going to be judged. Accept it. Move forward. All right? Expect the problems. And I promise you that if your team understands that you're just the steward, that helped develop this. Try to get as many people involvement and buy-in on that plan so there's some additional ownership by departments. Again, that's what we said earlier. We're divine risk appetite. Reach out to departments. What we find when we come into a loss, and sometimes we get labeled as, oh man, they were our knight in shining armors. They came in and snapped fingers and got things done. No, we're just real good about knowing who to go ask. I'll pick on Cocoa Beach just because they've had a couple losses over the last couple years, right? A big city hall police department loss and then a country club loss. Two unique factors. Here and then a revenue generator, both that we had to keep open and operational, that took advantage of a lot of the programs. But what we learned in that too was that they were prepared. Public Works made us look like heroes because when we showed up, Public Works was there meeting us. They understood the program, they understood what they needed, they understood the policy and extra expense, and they were there with us clearing the path to say, we can put temporary chillers here, we want this stuff here. So police department already had a quick form for us to know that if their building was affected to the point that it was not safe for their officers and their personnel to operate, that we knew what they needed before an event. And those resources in a laydown area was already identified. So to the executive leadership, everybody else, man, they thought we were heroes. No, we walked in because we had folks that attended a couple workshops and took notes. And we had a plan, and we walked in there, and those departments knew what they needed, and we weren't there trying to figure it out. And that's really what we want to do. We want to just find out ways that this message gets drilled down to your various key department heads so they can take some of the work off of your shoulders if you're that risk manager or finance director that's trying to push these initiatives and programs. Get the ownership down at the departmental level. Show them how the insurance policies and these programs benefit their department and help their operations. Okay? It's not there to redefine how you guys as an organization do things. It's not there to tell a department, you've got to do it this way. Think of it as is that our programs and what FMIT has built together is there to provide capacity. It's there to act as an extension of yourselves and your departments. Is it just money? Do you need some resources? Do you need some of the extra project management? Do you need some extra claim consulting? That's what these programs are designed for. So don't think of it as just because we presented it this way and we put a blue bow on it, that it doesn't work another way. But that's where you've got to step up and tell us, much like Cocoa Beach has done. All right, so now quickly we'll talk about the plan. The plan should outline the various deliverables on how that affects what it is that you're trying to then put us on alert for. So we've got emergency executive orders procurement. Talk a little bit more about what that means. And everything else that we go through, the response protocol, pandemic, how do we help you with damage assessments, debris management, what's the property insurance claim, all the way down through FEMA. That can be complex. We're already, maybe a week or 2 weeks away from our first event. So we're probably not going to get down through all this. So today's goal is maybe just start with one. How do we get where we need to be to put us in our best position to take advantage of these programs? All right, so various accounts. In simplicity, how many folks even know what simplicity is? All right, so an opportunity to learn a little bit. Simplicity is a software the FMIT paid a great deal of money over 10 years to develop. It works in conjunction with a lot of the other software programs that you work with insurance on. This hosts all of your assets, your critical information, your claims, your projects. This is as transparent as you can get. Now, while we may show you some screenshots, they're in that mode. They're not as gooey because we're opening it up in a holistic view. So this is Vero Beach. So while you can't see all this, what this does is it tells us about the city, their size, demographic, goes down, main address information, the contact, emergency contact information. You can see Vero Beach has gone in and already put primary, a lot of secondaries, and what's fun is you can't see all their cell phones and home phone numbers because it is fun where you just dial them up at 3 in the morning and just say hello to them, tell them you saw their name at a seminar. We've got a document repository where they can upload their lists, or at least what they've worked with us and said, these are our expectations, here's what we expect, here's that. We'll show some more examples of that as we go. That's just the account side. We'll jump into this a little bit more and show you how you can look at a claim, how you can see what's going on every day. Guys, if you're not using the tools, right, you're missing out. This puts you in control. This is how you can hold us all more accountable, are through these various tools that FMIT puts out there in front of you. And it's something that Forrest and the claims team is there for you. We unfortunately got a lot of practice at this, from all the projects from Michael that were halfway done, and then through the latest storm, whether that was, what came after, Taylor? Sally. Okay, that we had to operate in all these environments with all the proper gear and make sure that every contractor that was on a project had their gear, and how we were taking temperatures and how we were handling egress and how we were getting contractors in your city when borders were closed. In Key West, we shut it down. You couldn't even get down on the roadway, right? So there were different procedures that all of us needed to know. So again, our team is there to respond both at a state level and what a federal mandate is, and also being very respectful of the fact that each of your communities may have another set of guidelines that we need to follow. So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that. It's about of just identifying it. So again, end of the day, identify your organization, or rather your department's plan. Let's communicate that. More importantly, share it with us. We have ways you can load it up. Doesn't have to be fancy. It can be a one-sheet little note just saying, we expect you to be here within 12 hours after we call you. Guys, that's a start. Start sharing expectations so we can all do a better job of supporting you. All right, so here are some of those response expectations. All these have been uploaded up on that shared drive that you can whatever the fancy thing is that we do to take a picture that I don't seem to be smart enough to make it work. All right, that's one avenue. For those of you less technical, in simplicity, we have a thing called Marketplace. You can go to Marketplace. Marketplace hosts not only every insurance form, every presentation that goes back to, I think when we were recording this in 2010, to every FEMA extension endorsement. If you're looking at how to get money for setting up a daycare, we'll have the exact, so we have COOP plans that are listed on here. We'll show that more. You can search this in the field up above, but if you go down below, you'll see a ton of, there's probably the most comprehensive FEMA endorsement page that you can read everything possible that's under the Stafford Act, from presentations to debris to every one of those are various ways of which you can maximize funding, all the way up then at the bottom to FMIT forms. So all this stuff is up there as well. As you can see on this, I'll pick up, this is the city of Delray Beach. This is 2.5 pages. It's broken down by initial damage assessment with 2 qualifiers, financing claims with 4, risk management with 3 with some other bullets, and what they expect from FMIT Synergy and Simplicity. On this, it's pretty simple, what it tells us that they expect in each of those categories. Doesn't get better than this. This is a great cliff note on being able to define what can we expect from insurance, how are we getting paid, when are you going to be here, at a very holistic level. I can tell you that most of you in this room haven't done this, your organization, so you're not alone. Our cities in the South all have. Why? They've had more losses and been more exposed. Besides Cocoa Beach, Melbourne, Auburndale, and Vero, who aren't here, they've all done it. That just means that they've been less fortunate than you have and already been down this path a couple times, so we're a lot further in this engagement. Here's an example of City of Sunrise and Town of Palm Beach. Now, Town of Palm Beach is a little bit more contract-oriented because that's Palm Beach-ish, right? I got to get all the attorneys involved. This went back and forth. City of Sunrise is, again, just pre-storm personnel placement. Technician will arrive prepared with bedding, food, water, rations, no less than 3 days. Technician will be, so that's where they're coming to us saying, you've offered us these programs, hey, we're taking advantage of it, and here's our expectations, here are our requirements. Makes it real easy for both these members to hold us accountable. And that's what we expect. So again, those examples are on there for easy to as complex as you want to make an arrangement. We have different tools to show you. Now this is the real cool one that we'll learn a little bit more of. This is the FMIT coverage endorsement. This talks about now the turnkey recovery program. That again, those of you that have utilized it because you had a loss in the past, know it and can speak volumes about it. If you haven't, great for you. This form now is the first of its kind. It allows now the insurance company to be able to use a recovery program during a declared federal event, meaning that this is written into your insurance policy that you bid out every 3 to 5 to 10 years that says you pay premiums to take advantage of not just coverage, but these other programs. These programs, thus, are eligible for you that if they fall into a declared event, don't be talked out of when you hire a consultant or the state or FEMA, because even though they wear DEM shirt and FEMA, they may be from Iowa. And they may not understand the uniqueness of a program that over 10 years has been successfully utilized without a de-obligation. It starts with indemnification. You're going to hire somebody, make them indemnify you. Instead of paying them all this hourly money that you won't see, don't let your organization fall subject to that puts you at odds initially with insurance. That's my biggest thing when I go around the country. If you're unhappy with the direction of a claim, that happens sometimes. There's maybe going to be an agreement to disagree. That's okay. Work through that process. If you then have gone through that and there's no other way, then yeah, go ahead and maybe take those other options. It's going to cost you the same at that point. But so many times when we get brought in as that other consultant, we go, why do you have all these consultants? Who's indemnify you? All these people you're listening to, do you get to go back against them if they don't get this money for you? If they don't tell you all the different insurance proceeds? In the meantime, oftentimes the claims department's just sitting back going, hey, listen, it's out of our hands. We're just waiting for the information to get to us. All right, so that's my spill on that. If you need some conflict resolution, come see me. I can tell you all the horror stories that are out there. This form helps you. This form doesn't say you're going to use the program. What it says is if the program is eligible, meaning we have a claim that FMIT says this is eligible to take advantage of these unique programs we have, then it gives you the opportunity to utilize that. Now, maybe you don't utilize it on every claim. That's okay. It's there for those claims to provide financial resources and a turnkey type deal. After lunch, you'll get to kind of hear and see some of the stories and how different members are using it. Asset survey information. So around every 5 years, we work with John and the team on working with you to go out and help document all of your insurable assets. Right? Cocoa Beach, we just finished. We go out and take all the pictures, COOP data, get everything that we have out there. Do the heavy lifting, present it back to you departmentally and everything else to go through and say, here's all your assets. How do you want to insure these? John's not there to come see you and raise premiums. Sometimes people go, oh gosh, that asset survey. No, here's your insured assets. We get it. You can't afford to insure everything you have. We all know that. John's job and our job is to work with you, say, with what money you have, whether it be a budget or this, tell us, work with us. We'll try to see how we can best apply those funds across all your insurable assets to provide the best coverage possible. Sometimes what we find when we meet with a city is they're top heavy in certain areas. They're paying premiums for stuff that maybe that's not a big risk item. Maybe that budget or that money could be better used in other areas. Now, there are times that a city comes back and says, we're going to increase our coverage. It is cheaper for us to insure additional assets to this value because our cap fund isn't what it is to be. And I know many of you here today have large cap funds, so that may not, you're willing to be self-insured at those levels, right? If you're not, it may be cheaper for you to buy some additional coverages for what that premium costs you. That's the smart stuff that John Ligon does for you. And that we try to help is, okay, how can we better use this money in these funds? So, and then what the asset survey does for us, and John will jump in, is when we get all this information, those of us on the claims and recovery side use it to support you in knowing what you need before you need it. So what our office has been doing now this week, which is a nightmare that we'll get into, is we're running models to say, all right, if this storm were to take a northeasterly bend, what's our exposure in that certain region? And we try to model how many members and assets we have in that region through all of our surveys. We've done what, $2 billion to date, Taylor? Somebody?
$2 billion in the last year, actually.
$2 billion in the last year of surveys around. So it's important that if your organization's not using it, use it, because that becomes the foundation to us on the recovery side. We can run a model saying how much polyiso, how much TPO do we need? How many generators do certain members have? And we can start building recovery plans to support your departments already knowing based on the data that we have. So when we say this is just a survey, we use that data in a lot of ways. And there's ways that our members are extrapolating, is that right? This data. And that's a big word for me, so let's take that as a couple points. Okay? That we're using that data to support some of their maintenance programs or other things. So as you listen to John here quick, think of two other ways that this data is available to you that Clay and his team work to help facilitate this.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Scott. I met a few of you this morning. As we talk about the asset survey program and the benefits of it, it's good to give you guys kind of a behind-the-scenes look at it, what we're dealing with the technology. If you look here, this example is City of Melbourne. We have data on them up here that shows the total insured value, asset survey value, all surveyed assets. Like Mike said, we did $2 billion in the last year in valuation, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this program. But essentially, we get your data in a spreadsheet form like this, and each individual survey that's done at a location is going to look something where there's a page, you have your location number, your exact GPS location that the photos are taken, so that will be your GPS location for that actual asset. The fire station, getting the structure and the images of it, the outside view of the building, and this just even helps us to value the buildings that you have. You got to realize your exposure before a major event, realize that some things are not going to be valued correctly. Some things are going to be at higher risk that aren't even insured. So having this data really helps our adjusters to be able to see what we're looking at and to be able to value these buildings correctly.
It also helps us if that building is now laying on the ground, that we can go back in and look at some fairly current images to be able to go in there and structurally see what was there. Because a lot of times it's tough. You know, we try to hire the best adjusters that are out there, but it's difficult. And what we're really just trying to do is get somebody out there that can really validate, was that building there? Was it damaged? And can we take some photos of what it looks like damaged? And then from there, we'll just work through the process, okay? So the asset survey program is fundamental. It does a lot of cool things that some of our cities are using where they take this data and we reverse engineer it and it feeds into their GIS mapping system. And we can start communicating with one another and tying buildings together. As you'll see going on after lunch, all of our mobile apps that we do the asset survey on, as well as now damage assessment, claim reporting, is tied to the initial asset survey, to where now you guys can have a mobile app that you can be in front of your building and grab that information. And if you wanted to make a report, whether it be an emergency or you want to work with us and say, hey, we already have all this info, why aren't we using this for our maintenance log? Where I can have my contractors and my guy walk up to my building, take a couple quick pictures, make a report, and boom, it appears into my mailbox, into whatever configuration. So this system is there for you at the FMIT. Spent a lot of time and money in developing, and it is really a cool system. We need to all start using it to some degree. Okay, I challenge all of you because this will make you look brilliant in a way to where you can really see everything. And then you'll probably do things with it that we weren't smart enough to know what we could do with it. So this has constantly been evolving as more and more members are using it, because it's now a sharing of ideas of what everybody needs to see, and it's really starting to educate us. It makes us look a lot smarter than what we are. Okay, this is the other thing. So the critical asset, here's an example. This is Tamarack. You can actually then go into that data and build a mini COOP plan. In this case, this is their fire station. They tell us it's 11 to 17 hours. They need to be operational. Primary fire station with SATCOM for command. Do they have emergency communication? Yes. They've got a mobile CAL system with AM antenna. Emergency power? No. We thought that was interesting. Now their generator's broke. They're ordering a new one. So right now they need a 175 kW if they're hit with 150 feet of cable to connect to the distribution panel. Emergency lights on site? No. They need 4,000 watt light tower diesel. They want 2 light towers set up in the corner. Blah, blah. Emergency fuel program? Yes, there was Stryker fueling. They got a 5,000 underground storage tank located at Public Works compound with 2 pumps. Okay? Enhanced details. Impact resistant glass? Yes. Fire suppression? Yes. Lighting? Yes. Standby power? No. Temporary power? No. Security? Yes. Great information. Took really 5 minutes to quickly work with them on critical buildings to build a mass. Now, we're part of your plan, right? We can now run you as part of an area-wide plan to say, how many generators are our members putting out for saying we need to be ready to supply? If you think that we're always heroes standing in a parking lot after an event happens, it puts us in a position to fail. This year, this date of time, it is difficult. Staying at this hotel brings it home. How many people got the privilege of staying overnight and doing our work study class? Work that in, right, Chief? So, you know, what we saw is the kitchen's closed. The market's closed. You had to order through the bar. Services aren't available because of hiring, because of transportation, because of distribution. We go out and purchase a great deal of commodities and assets and working with the FMIT and what our members have identified what their exposures are. So try to go out there right now and buy plywood just to do a repair at your home. What's that cost factor? Huge. You think our insurance programs have identified all the inflated costs that are going? No. Try to find AC units, 5-ton, 10-ton units now. The big systems are there, the little components, the widgets that are made up of all the casts and the dies that come from Taipei, they're in here. There are things that we can no longer get our hands on. There are stories that other members will tell you that after Michael, we were there. We have our 5-acre critical site laydown area set up. We brought Sunbelt in with all of their resources, fueling, everything. We had Carrier on staff already where we bought a number of inventory before the storm ever hit. So from the factory, ahead of their distributors, We already commanded those resources, okay? Through Dow Corning and through our other roofing providers. We had TPO already in warehouses. Now, that just doesn't happen. We're not going to go out there and just buy that stuff ahead of a storm and hope people are using it. We're running models, and FMIT is trying to say, how can we be more proactive in serving our members? That's really the primary goal of the claims department. They hate adjusting a claim on the back end, but we're there to kind of help get through it, hopefully, to reduce the damages, reduce the need. And if it is damaged, how do we do a better job of working through all of these timelines? So if we don't have all this data, it's harder for us to also pre-plan. And this year, it's tough. We are pulling our hair out right now, trying to get our commitments that we used to put up $2 million. And we've got factories saying, and they're saying, that's not going to get you anything. We can't even get you. So now we're out hiring our own truck driving, our own distribution to bring stuff in because we can't count on. And everybody's telling us the same thing. They tell us, yeah, don't worry, which then I'm really worrying because it's like, you're telling me not to worry. That means you have no clue. Then I've got others that say, listen, we have no idea, COVID. And that's the current fallback now. I got in trouble the other day because I wasn't doing my share around the house. I told my wife it's because of COVID. I can't do laundry, it's COVID. I'm restricted. That didn't work too well. All right, we will continue to be there as a resource. And it says, Synergy continues to ensure. I kind of want to maybe say, COVID. Here's what I will promise you. If you'll work with us and tell us what you need and what your expectations are, they'll be there for you. There hadn't been one member that's worked with FMIT that has sat down with us, whether it's a 15-minute call or whether it's whatever it is, that when we sit down and put it on paper, that we've not answered the bell. Don't listen to me. I'll show you a site you can go to and look at every claim, every story, everything out there, good and bad. But if you're not sharing with us, you put us in a position to fail. We're there and we can still move a lot of mountains, especially in Florida. There's no mountains, right? Except a landfill. Okay. Your department must have a plan to support their daily operations. Here are some of the things that we try to work with ahead of a storm. Biggest and other thing is like what Cocoa Beach did. Work with us on key parts of your departments, your buildings. If they're damaged, what's plan B, what's plan C? After that, we quit planning ourselves. Give it 3, hip hip hooray, and then after that, we're all on our own to figure it out. So alternate workspaces, temporary rental structures. Is there something unique out there that we need to understand that maybe members have that we weren't aware of? Office pack out, community connectivity, number of work desks, stations, we can kind of figure that out on the fly. And then permitting departments. It's always great to us to have a conversation with your building department or understand building department's goals, initiatives, because oftentimes they're pushed to the side when recovery happens on your own buildings. And guys, I'm here to tell you that sometimes crap on your own buildings, right? Do we have a building official here? Right? Sometimes your hands get tied on your own buildings. And it's tough, not in your case. I know that your city, you right on top. Some of our other cities we find we go into doing recovery work and it's as if permitting never existed. Like, wait a minute, guys. We need to handle recovery as you expect your community to do it. That doesn't mean tie our hands unnecessary, but we need to have that discussion with building to make sure that we're working together, that we don't end up redlining a building or doing things in which your building department's there to help protect you. They're there as another tool to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. Now, I'll cry both ways. Right? I'll cry when a building official is getting in the way and both, but they need to be in the way. So part of this program is find a way to encourage building department and that group to be part of this discussion. It's better for us to have that discussion before we then start butting heads because we have a misunderstanding of how things want to be done. Is that fair? Okay. So some of the examples, this was something up in Williston, sinkhole a couple years ago that took out City Hall, the fire department. 72 hours, we needed to stand up workspace for City Hall. We had to stand up a garage thing for fire trucks. And then we brought in living quarters to sleep, burp, and feed some of the volunteer fire department and some of that group to keep operations going. kind of unique structure, police department, maintenance building burned. That next day, they had a number of fleet vehicles that were in service. So we had to go out and find 5,000-pound portable lifts, put lifts in, create a temporary structure that maintenance and different things could be done on these police cars that weren't totally damaged, that were still serviceable. So that was unique. Here is over on the West Coast, one of our big water parks. Kind of new for us that in this case, we were trying to stand up concessions, food service, POS equipment, temporary coolers, food, and we were running that water park, which was fun. That was a lot of fun nights having the keys to the place and lights and everything else, playing at your own water park. This was one of our golf course losses. Again, standing up portable facility, those things to help the member continue with their operations. Plantation, you'll see a lot of things around revenue generated events, what we talked about, right? Money, or more than ever, the community awareness, where community says, that's key to me. If that's down, that's impacting my life here in this city. I pay taxes, darn it. Why is this tennis court closed? Everybody's heard those type of calls. This just happened before the big, what was that? The youth championship of Florida?
It was the clay court Southern Championships. In addition to that, it was also right at the start of summer with about 30 different kids' summer camps going on.
So we had to bring in temporary stuff to keep the club working, restrooms, signage, off space. These are things that, again, FMIT has programs set up to work through that and special coverages for it. Here are just some other stuff that we kind of like doing, all these unique things to set up overnight. A big indoor food service, similar to how we handled a NASA situation where we got to feed people, do things. Machine shop, indoor gyms, different things that we're tasked with in a very short amount of time. These are the special programs that FMIT builds into their coverage. And if you don't know what they are and how you pay for this, you're really missing the boat, because this is why you're insured with FMIT. This is why your city pays for the premium service that they do rather than going with the other guys. So take advantage of it. This is the compatible or the sustainable advantage of one of them the FMIT brings to the table, or all of these programs that other insurance companies don't provide. And it really puts us in a cool position of being able to do things to support you, in which other clients don't have that as a resource, all right? So to find out more about that.
And Mike, real quick.
Yep.
Let's talk about PDMC real quick. I think we
next.
had it on there earlier, but as we're talking about endorsements. So we talk about a lot of things that the FMIT is really industry leading in, and in my opinion, there really is no endorsement that sets them further apart from their competitors than the PDMC endorsement. Anybody here heard of the PDMC endorsement? Anybody familiar with that? All right, so PDMC stands for Property Damage Mitigation Coverage, okay? It's a free endorsement. It's basically a throw-in with your policy. And what property damage mitigation coverage is there for is it provides up to $500,000 per named storm event for things such as board up, roof tarping, demolition of impacted building materials, drying of buildings, environmental clearance. And what it's really going to do is it's going to put your building in a position that it's now ready for putback. It's not going to cover the putback, but it's going to hand you the keys back, and it's going to be ready to be reconstructed. What PDMC is really there for is it's there for below deductible claims. I'll tell a real quick story, but how PDMC kind of came about was some of the leadership team that's in the back today, Vernell and Clay's team and Chris Smith, they kind of recognized in Hurricane Irma, one of the big exposure items was that Hurricane Irma, for much of the state, Hurricane Irma impacted close to 3/4 of the state of Florida, and was largely kind of a nuisance event for even many of you here in this room. Some had some greater damage. Obviously, Cocoa Beach had some significant losses from Irma. I think Dade City had some fairly significant roof claims. But what Irma did is it created a lot of really nuisance damages, things like wind-driven rain. And obviously, since we're talking about named storm claims, deductibles are generally higher. We had a lot of below deductible damage. So what FMIT realized is that, hey, our members are lacking coverage just simply because the damage doesn't exceed the deductible threshold. So this is kind of how this property damage mitigation coverage came about. So highly recommend, write down PDMC, make sure you talk to your staff about it. We talk to a lot of members in our post-storm outreaches who tell us, you know, we've got some minor damage to buildings, probably not going to exceed the deductible. Well, that's what this is for. It's a throw-in. It's offered at absolutely zero deductible, so it's no cost to you to pay for things like water extraction, drying, demolition, roof tarping, things of that nature. 100% free.
Great. We'll talk about that again in the 101 on insurance, but that's a big point when we hit. So we can't go over PDMC enough. It's really a lost opportunity for many of you. That it's time sensitive. There's a time and place for it. There's some other conditions that, again, FMIT can work with you, but it's a very unique coverage form that not another provider has. It's because of the financial capacity of the league and the kind of leverage we have on the reinsurance that we can ask for these special coverage lines. Please take advantage of it responsibly. Doesn't mean it's going to be eligible for every case. It's something that Forrest and Chris and his team work very hard on to look at opportunities where these extra coverage forms can be utilized. So the COOP plans, as we just talked about everything, we've got a lot of different COOP plans that are listed up on Marketplace, all shapes and sizes. Comprehensive 1,000-page one all the way down to just a couple little pages. So you can go in, it's at the very top if you search for COOP, and you can look at templates and or what other members are using. We've got a pandemic one on there for how one of the fire departments are using the new pandemic guidelines. So any information that collaboratively we work with you and the member on, we try to share that. We try to put it out there so you can reach out and garner as much information as you can.